Hello everyone, this is going to be the start of our Node module. So before we start, I just wanted to take a moment to see what we've been building so far. So far we've been working on a front end. You will hear the word front end or client side development, basically things that work in the client, which in our case is the browser. So when we did something like the GitHub portfolio page, which looks like that, basically when we go click GitHub, there is a call, an Ajax call that happens, and that gets a list of repos and render them on the page. Same when we did the Beyonce app or any React app. If I refresh this, there is a bit that gets called when a component did mount. Here it fetches some URL, and then we render that in the GitHub API exercise. We also call the GitHub API, which is an important word for today, and that retains some data, and we do something with that data on the DOM with document.querySelector, or here using React to manipulate the DOM. If I open the inspector on this and see here the network tab, then this can show me what's happening there. You can see that if I here filter by all, there is a call first of all that gets an HTML page. The HTML, one of them should be the HTML page, and then we get some resources like all the images and so on. And there is, if I filter by XHR, you see that there is a call to an API that gets back some data, and then we do something with that data. So this is more or less the division between client and server. Here, even in this one, is more obvious, I think. If I refresh the page, look at the network tab, just filter by all, and refresh the page, and you see what's happening, that the first is a call to get the HTML, which gets some extra resources, and then here at this stage here there is a call for the repos API. So it calls api.github.com, and that returns for us a JSON containing all the data. So that that call to the API happens in the client side using Ajax, something like fetch or XHR for like XML HTTP request. It's just some way for the web page to call the server. But there is also before that, even there is a server just to serve the HTML itself. So we talked before about HTTP, which is the protocol that run the internet, hypertext transfer protocol, and we talked about few things that the criteria for that. So we have a request method. So what the browser does is just say get and a URL. A URL is a resource, some resource that we want to get. This, in this case, it will return for us an HTML page. So it returns status. 200 means it's okay. 200 is the most common one, which means it's everything is okay. We return with success. This is one here is unique 304. That just means that it was served from the cache. And then everything here will be the same. You will have a request to some server that returns a response, and you call the server using one of the methods. We have get, post, put. Typically get is to get a resource, post to create something, like if you submit a form or so on. Put if you're updating, as if you're updating a page or a form or your profile, whatever. Delete if you're deleting something. And if you think about it, everything we're building on the internet is basically, or most of it will fall under this. You're creating something, you're getting some information, you're updating it, you're deleting it, and so on. But the main thing that we have a client, the browser, that makes some HTTP requests to a server, and the server in the API case is in the API of GitHub is lives in github.com. So someone in GitHub built that API, that service for us to consume, and we don't care how it works, we don't care what it does inside. Maybe it goes and checks other services or whatever. What we care about is it's almost like it's an interface to us, that we know how to call it, with which URL and which verb, and if we need to give it some data as well, and we know that we will get back from it a response that looks a certain way, and then we can manipulate and show that response. So what's happening up to this point, we didn't care about the server side. We built the client that talks to the server, and what will happen from this class going on with the node classes is that we're going to tackle the other side of this client side client server relationship. So we were building the client. Now we will start building the server, and the language that we are going to use for that is Node.js. For client development, it's always for the browser, it's always HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are the three things that the browser understands. HTML for telling it the content, CSS to tell it how to style it, and JavaScript for behavior, like calling an API, having maybe some animation, so having some changing of the DOM, interacting with the DOM mostly. So these are the three languages that we use for the client. For the server, there are way more ways of writing servers and APIs and so on. So traditionally, there were JavaScript didn't work on the server. It was just a client-side language. It just started after about 10 years ago with Node.js, that you could run it on the server, and you can build with it server applications. But before that, people used languages like PHP, Python, a lot of languages to do server-side development. So there are things that you cannot do on the client that you can do on the server. On the server, you can write to files, you can talk to databases, you can there is much more that you can do on the server that the client, the browser specifically, for security reasons, for other reasons, it's a sandbox. It restricts what you can do. You can mostly just manipulate the DOM, and you can do calls to external resources with Ajax, for example. So from today, we're going to start with building server applications using Node.js, and we will concentrate mostly on building APIs similar to this GitHub API. So an API is an interface that we talk to and returns some data or creates some data or so on. And this will be the topic for today's session.